Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. Happy 2026 to everyone out there. I had an amazing Christmas and New Year's, and I hope you and your family did as well. We were on the road basically from the 19th all the way until yesterday. Went down to the Virgin Islands for the first time since I was there as a kid. As I say, a kid, like a 25-year-old. Still a licensed attorney there. But the British Virgin Islands and the U.S. Virgin Islands, absolutely beautiful, especially during the holiday season. So we had an awesome time there. I hope everybody had an incredible time. We got a ton of stories to jump into. College football Final Four is set. I'm going to talk about Stranger Things. I don't think I put it in the subject headings there, but I've got thoughts on it. We also have an incredible game last night. Steelers get the win over the Ravens. The NFL playoffs are set. We'll break down some of that. The raid in Venezuela, Maduro arrested. And on top of that, we also have Tim Walz basically ending his political career after a 23-year-old YouTuber demonstrated the crazy amount of fraud that Minnesota has been allowing on behalf of Somali daycares. All of that still to come, but let's go ahead and dive into college football to start. And I want to begin 2026 with an acknowledgement that I was wrong. I thought that Alabama would line up and play Indiana really well in the Rose Bowl. I was 100% wrong. Congratulations to the Hoosiers. Senator Jim Banks texted me this morning. He said, "Hey, Clay, if you wear your Indiana gear, then everybody in the state of Indiana will forget that you said, mark my words, basically, save this tweet, that Alabama was going to beat Indiana." I was wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong. If anything, we are under-discussing Curt Cignetti and what he has accomplished at Indiana. I think it is the greatest turnaround in the history of sports. And that's not hyperbole. I really think if you look at the entire history of Indiana football, we are talking about one of the worst records all time of any program that plays major college football in the country. And in the space of 2 years, Curt Cignetti has come in at Indiana, and he has completely remade that program, the likes of which we've never seen before. And so I think it's an incredible story. It speaks to the rapid paradigm shift that we are seeing take place in college athletics, college football in particular. If you told me that Indiana was going to make Alabama quit at football, I would have bet 2 years ago as much money as I could have gotten down that Alabama would not quit against Indiana. What was the final? 38-3 wouldn't happen. This is what's shocking. Last year, I felt like Indiana was a good story, but it was an aberrational bump that sometimes happen that isn't reflective of a larger structural change. This year, I think Indiana should be considered the best team in college football and a substantial favorite to be the national champion. There is no smoke and mirrors here. This feels like, to me, Saban-esque in the dominance that Cignetti is bringing to bear. I was watching this dude after the beatdown. First of all, during the game, Cignetti is a psychopath. He looks like Nick Saban on the sideline. Never happy, constantly maniacally focused on the process of the game itself, wants to beat your brains in, and expects everybody top to bottom, even the backups, to come in and dominate. And I should have seen this. The dude wears like a windbreaker with no shirt underneath. That is psychotic behavior. He's probably doing it because it's the most efficient way to keep himself comfortable on the sidelines. He's probably got an entire Excel spreadsheet on the optimal temperature under which he needs to be coaching. And he determined that if he has a T-shirt on, that the windbreaker then becomes too hot, and he just goes straight skin under the windbreaker. Psycho behavior. I love it. He's like Nick Saban in the postseason, the post game, when he's standing on the stage and he just looks utterly disgusted with the fact that you get a trophy or that there's any kind of celebration at all. Remember how Saban would be on the stage and he would sometimes be writing notes to himself and he would look like it was just such an utter waste of his time to be standing there hoisting a trophy in any way trying to celebrate? That's Cignetti. He is the closest thing to Saban that we have seen. Props to Indiana. I was wrong. I think Indiana is going to win the national championship. Okay, that is my take on Indiana. Alabama's in trouble. Okay, here is the reality. Kalen DeBoer is going to get fired. He is not going to be the guy going forward for Alabama. I think deep down, every Alabama Crimson Tide fan agrees with me on this. And actually, the best case scenario, we had Black Monday in the NFL. All these different guys got fired. The best case scenario probably is that somebody successful gets hired. I don't think it's going to happen from college to the NFL. That job opens up and Kalen DeBoer can just leave because this is not going to be a successful tenure for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. Team doesn't look good. They can't run the football. They are not physical at the point of attack. They quit multiple different times during the course of the season. They got utterly dominated by Georgia in the SEC championship game, utterly dominated by Indiana in the Rose Bowl, utterly dominated by Florida State to start the season. And they were fortunate to win a lot of close games. I can run through them. Missouri, Vanderbilt. Again, you go back and you look at a lot of those games, smoke and mirrors that Alabama found a way to win. And I think that Kalen DeBoer is not the right fit for Alabama. I'm not sure that there's going to be a right fit for Alabama, to be fair, because I think the reason Nick Saban left deep down was because he recognized the structural disadvantages that Alabama had going forward. In particular, the fact that Alabama doesn't have the same kind of NIL money, candidly, that Texas and Ohio State and Texas A&M and a lot of other schools do, big donor dollars to be able to pay the best salaries to the players. That's the reality. So I think Alabama has a bunch of structural issues, paradigm shift in college athletics. I think Saban saw it. That's why he left. But Kalen DeBoer is just not going to work. I think that the wheels are going to really come off next year, and Kalen DeBoer is going to get fired at some point midway through next season. That's my prediction. First 2 years, not good. And it's not going to work. I'm not sure who the right fit is for Alabama, but I think the best solution would be Kalen DeBoer. Suddenly another job opens. I think if Alabama had lost to Oklahoma, I think there's a decent chance that Kalen DeBoer might have left for Michigan. I think Alabama would have been happy about that. And I think deep down, Alabama Crimson Tide fans agree with me now. So that's my take on the Alabama side of the equation. Miami. Most impressive win of the college football playoffs was Indiana. Biggest and best win relative to the competition was Miami. Credit to Mario Cristobal. I was right. The College Football Playoff Committee was right on Miami making it. They went on the road and they beat Texas A&M, defensive dominance. They then beat Ohio State, and they had control of the game throughout. I think you have to give tremendous credit to Miami for the win that they got. Ohio State, really disappointing season. Last year, they lost to Michigan, but were able to redeem themselves by winning 4 playoff games. Remember, but for the fact that we went to a 12-team playoff, they might have fired Ryan Day. Certainly, Ohio State wouldn't have been in the playoff. They got in as the number 8 overall seed last year. This year, get beat by Indiana, don't win the Big Ten, lose your first-round game. Granted, you had a bye, but lose your first-round game to Miami. It was a really disappointing season. I think there are a lot of questions about Julian Sayin going forward. A lot of great talent. Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith at the wide receiver position for Ohio State. Not sure that Sayan was actually anywhere near the quality of player that we thought he was, and making him one of the 4 finalists for the Heisman Trophy. So credit to Miami for that win. I think Ohio State, things still a little bit wobbly going forward. I'm not sure that Ohio State was the team we thought they were. I also think the weak schedule caught up with them in the big game against Indiana and in the big game against Miami. They hadn't been in a phone booth in a tough fight, and I think they showed that they got a little bit of a glass jaw when it came to actually getting in a tight fight against both Indiana, who was more challenged, I think, in the regular season, going on the road against Iowa, going on the road against Oregon. I think Indiana was the more challenged team. They got in that phone booth fight. They won. And I think Miami was the more challenged team. They played a tougher schedule, and I think you saw that when they got into a tight game against Ohio State. They were comfortable in those quarters, and they got the win. How about the game between Ole Miss and Georgia? Trinidad Chambliss completely took over in the second half. Hotty toddy, biggest win, certainly in any of the lives almost of anybody watching out there. You have to go back to the Arch E. Manning era in order to have any kind of win of that signature level back in the 1960s for Ole Miss. Biggest win in 60 some odd years. I would argue biggest win ever, considering how much bigger college football is now than it was back then. Best game of the college football playoffs, second round. What a matchup between Georgia and Ole Miss. Thought Kirby Smart made some questionable decisions, but I think you have to give all the credit to Pete Golding, Trinidad Chambliss, and all of those Ole Miss players who put everything on the line and won. Fabulous environment down there in the Sugar Bowl. And now we got Ole Miss going up against Miami. We'll talk about that later in the week as we get ready for that game on Thursday. We'll do a college football preview, NFL playoff preview with Kelly Stewart, the Fade, on Wednesday afternoon. And then the other win out there as just a complete dominance by Oregon, never in doubt at all. Texas Tech, Cody Campbell has done a really good job. Brendan Sorsby, $5 million reportedly leaving Cincinnati to be the quarterback for Texas Tech. They got to get better on the offensive side of the ball, and they think they are doing that certainly at the quarterback position. So the NIL process is underway, but congratulations to Dan Lanning, Dante Moore, everybody who put the beat down as they did in the Oregon game. Big picture thoughts, I got a ton of them on college football. The one thing I will say, though, is, and I do think we're working towards it, we got to have way more games on college campuses. Whatever your thoughts are, whether you're an SEC, Big Ten, ACC, Big 12, non-Power 5, whoever it is, we should have had games. Texas Tech should have been hosting. Georgia should have been hosting. We should have had Indiana hosting, and we should have had Ohio State hosting on campus. All of those teams should have gotten to host home playoff games. We have to have at least the first and the second round on campus. I actually would follow the NFL model and go first, second, third round, only the championship game at a neutral site. It's being played in Miami this year. To me, that is a no-brainer. Okay, that's my big picture takes on the college football playoff games that were. Loved watching all of them. Let me tell you right now, PrizePicks is now available in all 50 states. All 50 states. You heard me. California, Texas, Florida, Georgia. If you've been feeling left out, all 50 states now have PrizePicks. Everybody can play all over the country. I'm going to give you a pick for the wild card weekend in the NFL. You get $50 when you play $5 for the first time. All you have to do is go to prizepicks.com, code OutKick. You can download the PrizePicks app and use code OutKick. Get hooked up really with an awesome weekend in the wild card. We'll have picks for you every single week of the NFL playoffs. Beginning with this weekend, wild card weekend underway. You're going to love playing PrizePicks. Use code OutKick and you get $50 when you play $5. That's code OutKick on the PrizePicks app. on PrizePicks.com. All 50 states get hooked up today. Okay, last night, what a game. What an absolutely phenomenal game. Ravens, Steelers, lots of screw-ups. But the Steelers got the win on the shanked 44-yard field goal attempt. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, star-crossed season. They began the year with a brutal, tough opening week loss against the Bills. They finished it with a brutal, tough final week loss against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. To me, and I've made this analogy quite a lot, Lamar Jackson feels to me like early era Peyton Manning. People say, what do you mean by that, Clay? If you remember back in the early part of Peyton Manning's career, it felt like so many different ways that the Colts and then later the Broncos, but early day Colts, they found so many different ways to lose. And if you go back and you look, the difference obviously is that Lamar Jackson, far more athletic quarterback, taken far bigger hits probably over time than Peyton Manning has. And so the question out there is, are they analogous in terms of the career longevity that Peyton Manning was able to have? I'm not sure that Lamar Jackson is going to have it. We've started to see a lot of his injuries stack up, and so there's a lot of questions out there about how well he's going to be able to have a long-term career. But it just feels like there's so many things that just go wrong that Lamar Jackson doesn't control. Puts his team in position to win multiple times on the road in the fourth quarter. Kicker just goes out and shanks it off to the right. After we had the priest in Pittsburgh who was out there giving the holy blessing on the field in the pregame, and then in that same end zone, shanks to the right. After, by the way, the Steelers also missed an extra point, which would have been in a position where they would have, worst case scenario, been dealing with the tie there. But as a result, Steelers get the win. Aaron Rodgers' redemption leaves the Packers and ends up in an awful situation with the Jets. Comes back, tough injury, returns, makes a bunch of big plays down the stretch, and the Steelers are now into the playoffs. Credit, by the way, to the Panthers, who also ended up in the playoffs. Lots of teams out there. Guys getting fired left and right. We'll get into Black Monday and how the NFL coaching searches are going to go going forward. How many different teams have fired their coach? The Cardinals, the Raiders, the Browns, the Falcons, and I'm sure that I'm forgetting somebody else, but just off the top of my head, all those different guys getting fired on Black Monday. A bunch of different jobs out there. The Titans obviously have already fired their coach, so there's going to be a bunch of new hires made there. Okay, that is Black Monday. Let me hit you with Venezuela. What an incredible, tremendous credit to our armed forces that they were able to put in place that raid on Venezuela and take Maduro and his wife out of that country without a single casualty on the American side. Not one loss of material. I was down in the Caribbean, and you could sometimes see and hear the planes flying over. And the aircraft carrier was right there in the Virgin Islands, not very far away. People were sharing photos of the aircraft carrier. We knew that this was potentially going to happen. I said months ago, I liked the idea of taking out Maduro. I think, frankly, we should also take out Cuba's leadership and actually return freedom to the people of Cuba and the people of Venezuela. I've been arguing it for a long time. Trump, in conjunction with J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, this is the best leadership team that we've ever had at the top of the armed forces. And if you actually really think about it, the difference between the way we left Afghanistan and the 13 innocent people who were killed and the hundreds of billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars, whatever it was, in war material that we left there. And you contrast it with the bombing that we saw in Iran, and also the action that we just saw in Venezuela. We have returned lethality to the military. We are the baddest ass military on the planet. And I think many people out there are looking around and saying, wow, bad actors in Iran, Russia, all over the world, North Korea, they're looking, China, and saying, wow, the U.S. military has a power and panache, the likes of which we've never seen. And they are executing at a level that we've never seen before, ever, a precise and phenomenal level of excellence, the likes of which we've never seen before. I think this was a more impressive raid than when we killed bin Laden. I, along with anybody else with a functional brain, gave President Obama credit for ordering the bin Laden raid. Remember, Joe Biden, wrong on everything, advised against it because he thought it was too dangerous. The precision that we saw on this raid deserves immense attention. Now, Kamala Harris and a lot of other Democrats came out and they said, oh my goodness, this is unacceptable. In January, Kamala and Biden were putting $25 million bounties on Maduro's head. This is crazy. Look, I think what happened here was important. I've said before, I agree with the decision. Now it's being called the Monroe Doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine. We shouldn't allow bad actors to be existing in our neighborhood in the Western Hemisphere. I've been arguing for a while to take out the head of Venezuela, to return oil production of a substantial nature to Venezuela, and to end once and for all the communism of Cuba. To me, it's a no-brainer. This is the very definition of America first. It is having a secure, safe environment inside of our country. And I give immense credit to everyone for making this raid happen in such an effective manner that everybody has taken note all around the world. I mean, I think it dwarfs in terms of complexity and in terms of excellence of action what happened with bin Laden. It was way more complicated and way more successful across the board beyond a shadow of a doubt. Okay, so all of that. I think we got a picture of Maduro, who was seized. They sold out of his Nike gear in and of itself. I believe that we've got that up right now. You can see that. Couple of other stories that are out there. I'll be back tomorrow with you here on OutKick the show. As always, click like and subscribe. And I appreciate you guys across the entire landscape of social media who are following both me and OutKick as well. Tim Walz has basically ended his political career because of Somali fraud, which was exposed in a mega viral video from a 23-year-old YouTuber named Nick Shirley. To me, the big story here, leaving aside Walz for a moment, is legacy media's power is over. It really doesn't exist anymore. The people who are driving much of our narrative in America now are just authentic, honest voices across the political spectrum that are not oftentimes affiliated with big media companies. And I think this is a credit to Elon Musk and the power that has been unleashed on Twitter/X. There are a lot of platforms out there. Nothing even approaches in any way the power and influence of Twitter. Way smaller audience. I'm not going to argue that. There's bigger audiences on YouTube. There's bigger audiences on Instagram. There's bigger audiences on Facebook. But in terms of influence, nothing approaches Twitter X. And Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter has, I believe, created this ecosystem where events and videos like Nick Shirley can go mega viral. And I believe it ended Tim Walz's career. Tim Walz has said he's now not going to run for re-election as Minnesota's governor. He says he's going to finish out his term now. I don't know if that's going to end up being true or not, but what I do know is if Tim Walz hadn't been picked as vice president by Kamala Harris, his political career probably would still exist. That made him a bigger target. That actually created the significance surrounding this incredible degree of fraud that was allowed to take place inside of Minnesota, where billions of dollars have been stolen in the Somali daycare fraud rings. And Tim Walz is basically, to me, acknowledging that he is guilty, that he is politically wounded to such an extent that it was mortal, and that he does not have anymore a political future at all. It was ended by this 23-year-old YouTuber, and now Tim Walz is finished. I think that he is completely ended as a viable political candidate in any kind of significant degree. And let me just point this out, too, because I do think it's significant. Tim Walz was the guy that Democrats thought was going to win back men for Democrats. He was the equivalent of a man that a lesbian would pick. This is the indicative, I think, of the collapse of masculine support for the Democrat Party. Tim Walz was the code speaker to white men in particular, and that code was a disaster. And yet another decision that Kamala Harris made that ended in unmitigated disaster, and now Tim Walz's political career is over. Okay, final topic here, Stranger Things. My kids wanted to go watch the finale of Stranger Things. We went to the theater. They put it on in several different theaters. And it was fun. It was a great environment, nearly sold out movie theater. Everybody was reacting. It's been 9 years since the first season of Stranger Things came out. I loved it. Stranger Things season 1. I really enjoyed, by and large, all 5 years. I watched it with all my kids, the Travis boys. My youngest is 11, so he was 2 years old when this series started. The other two boys grew up kind of watching it. I don't have any major criticisms of the show, as many shows do. It peaked in the first season, but then I thought it maintained an okay tone, still had a lot of successful seasons. I really enjoyed it. The whole gay thing completely killed much of season 5 for me. The big speech, spoiler alert if you haven't watched it, the next to last episode where we had all of a sudden they're trying to save the world. There were lots of plot holes, I thought, in the 5th season. And then they have a huge thing about this character who's gay. Nobody cares, all right? If you're gay, more power to you. If you're straight, more power to you. I hope you pursue whatever makes you happier in life. But this idea that we have to have a major revelatory moment as the world is potentially in peril for this guy to come out so everybody can understand that he's gay. Look, if you can save the world, I don't care who you sleep with, as long as they're consenting adults. In fact, if you can win the SEC, I'm fine with you living in a sorority house. All right. As long as you're dealing with consenting adults, nobody out there cares about your sexuality. I just thought it felt ham-handed. It felt like an after-school special. It was an embarrassing interlude that had nothing to do with the overall story. And it's just Netflix having to inject left-wing absurdity, woke programming into what otherwise should have been a good show. Put it all on the cutting room floor. Just give us good shows. I don't need to know about somebody's sexuality when it comes to fighting evildoers in the 1980s. I liked the show. If they knocked out the 5 minutes from season 5, it would have made season 5 much better. I was fine with the conclusion, but come on, can we just have shows that are not trying to club us over the head with woke messaging that is completely unnecessary and takes us out of the overall flow of the narrative? I don't think it's too much to ask. All right, I love all of you. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I am Clay Travis. 2026, I hope, turns into the greatest year of all of our lives. 2025, in my always humble opinion, was one of the greatest years that our country has ever had. Collapsing rates of murder, biggest decline of murder we've ever seen, 2.7% inflation at the end of the year, 4.3% economic growth, all-time stock market highs. I believe we are headed for a golden era in 2026 and beyond. I'm incredibly optimistic about the trajectory the nation is on, and I hope that I am right and we can all have a spectacular 2026. Again, DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'm Clay Travis. This has been OutKick the Show. I will see all of you tomorrow.